in a small coastal town in the Philippines, where the sound of tricycles filled the streets, and the smell of the sea drifted through the open windows of tiny, wooden homes lived a young boy named Marcelito. He didn't have much growing up, not in the way of toys, money, or comfort, but he had something deep inside him that even he couldn't fully understand. Yet long before the world would hear his voice, long before Simon Cowell would sit back in disbelief, at the sound coming from this young, Filipino boy, Marcelito lived a life shaped by challenges, silence, and the longing to be heard. His home was small, built from thin pieces of wood, nailed together with a roof that groaned whenever the rain poured. Nights were often noisy with wind and water dripping into buckets, strategically placed on the floor. For many children, these kinds of nights brought fear or discomfort. But for young Marcelito, they brought something else. They brought music. He would listen to the rhythm of the rain tapping on the roof, the waves crashing in the distance, the wind humming through cracks in the walls. Every sound felt like a part of a hidden song that only he seemed to hear. As a boy, Marcelito didn't talk much. He kept quiet, observing the world with soft eyes, absorbing everything, voices, rhythms, emotions. His neighbors sometimes wondered if he was shy or simply lost in thought, but they didn't know that inside him, something powerful was growing, a voice that didn't match his size or his age, a voice that one day would travel across the world. Living in poverty meant life wasn't always gentle. Meals were scarce, school supplies were limited, and the weight of survival pressed onto his small shoulders. Yet somehow, despite the difficulties, Marcelito always found himself drawn to sound. Whenever the radio played, he would sit close, almost as if he were afraid the music might escape him. He learned songs not by reading lyrics, but by feeling them, repeating every note until it sank deep into his bones. He discovered something else, too. His voice could change when he was alone. He would experiment, shifting from deep tones to high ones, not understanding that what he was doing was rare. He didn't know that one day the world would call it a gift to him. It was simply a way of expressing what he couldn't say out loud. One afternoon, while the sun was slowly setting and the sky was painted with orange and pink clouds, Marcelito was sitting outside his home. Humming softly, a neighbor walking by suddenly froze. She heard something so pure, so unexpectedly beautiful, that she looked around to see where the sound was coming from. When she realized it was him, the small, quiet boy who rarely spoke, she was stunned. She told his mother that he had a beautiful voice, but his mother simply smiled. She knew her son had something special, but the world around them was full of challenges, and dreams often felt like luxuries they couldn't afford. But the boy kept singing, not for fame, not for recognition, but because it made him feel alive. It made him feel free. His voice became his escape from loneliness, from hardships, from the weight of a world that didn't always embrace those who had little. And every time he sang, he felt a warmth inside him, something that pushed him forward, even when life tried to pull him back. As he got older, people started noticing him more. He would sing at small gatherings, community events, or sometimes just along the road when someone encouraged him. His voice was unlike anything they had heard from a boy his age. He could switch from a deep, rich tone to a soaring high note that sounded almost angelic. The people would cheer, clap, and encourage him, telling him that one day he would be famous. But Marcelito would simply smile shyly, unsure of what the future held. One day during a small-town celebration, he was asked to sing on stage. It wasn't a big stage, just a few pieces of wood set up under a canopy, but to him it felt huge. His heart pounded as he stepped onto it. He could hear whispers from the crowd. Eyes all fixed on him, he took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and opened his mouth. What came out left everyone stunned. People stopped talking, children sat still. Adults looked at each other in disbelief. This boy wasn't just singing. He was pouring out emotions too deep for a child to understand. When he finished, the crowd erupted in applause. For the first time, Marcelito saw what his voice could do. It could move people that night. He lay awake thinking about the applause. He didn't think about fame or wealth. He just thought about how good it felt to make people smile, how powerful it felt to share something that came from his heart. He realized that singing wasn't just a talent. It was a part of him as years passed. Marcelito continued to grow, both in skill and spirit, but life's challenges never disappeared. He faced moments when he felt lost, moments when he doubted himself, moments when he wondered if his dreams were too big for someone like him. Yet every time he felt like giving up, He returned to the thing that had always been there for him. His voice became his light, guiding him through darkness, pushing him forward even when the path seemed impossible. People began encouraging him to join bigger contests, to explore opportunities beyond his small town. And though he was nervous, he took those steps, each one bringing him closer to a world he once thought unreachable. Then came the day that changed everything. The day he stepped onto a stage so bright, so grand that it didn't feel real. An international stage, a place where dreams either soared or shattered. As he stood there, microphone in hand, looking out at the massive audience, all the memories of his childhood rushed back to him. The dripping roof, the quiet nights, the makeshift stages, the lonely moments where only music kept him company. The judges looked at him with curiosity, but one man watched him more closely. Simon Cowell, known for his high standards and sharp honesty. Simon studied the young Filipino boy carefully. The audience whispered, unsure of what to expect from someone so young, so humble, so quiet. Then Marcelito sang the moment his voice filled the air. Everything changed, the room fell silent, and Simon leaned forward, his eyes widening. The notes flowed effortlessly, rising and falling like waves, the purity, the strength, the emotion. It was all too much for the audience to process at once. People's jaws dropped, hands covered. Mouths and eyes sparkled with awe. Simon Cowell couldn't believe his ears. He had heard thousands of voices, judged countless talents, but never had he heard something like this from a boy so young. When Marcelito shifted into his dual voice, the crowd erupted. The judges glanced at each other in shock, and Simon slowly stood up, completely stunned by the time the final note echoed through the room. Everyone was on their feet. The cheers were deafening. Marcelito stood there trembling, tears forming in his eyes, unable to process what was happening. Simon looked at him with a rare expression, pure admiration. He nodded, applauding slowly, the disbelief still on his face. That moment changed everything. The boy who once sang to stop feeling alone now stood on a stage where the whole world could hear him. The boy who grew up with so little now held a gift so powerful. It reached across continents. The boy who listened to rain and waves to find music now had millions listening to him. Instead, Marcelito walked off that stage, knowing he had done something extraordinary, not just for himself, but for every child who came from nothing, for every dreamer who was told they weren't enough, for every voice that stayed quiet because the world was too loud. His journey didn't end there, but that moment became a symbol of hope, a reminder that greatness can come from the humblest beginnings, a reminder that talent has no boundaries, no financial requirement, no limits, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary voices come from the quietest corners of the world. And for Marcelito, it became the moment the world finally heard him. Not just his voice, but his story, his struggles, his heart. And Simon Cowell, the man known for his tough judgments, could only sit there stunned, unable to believe his ears.